There's a moment, quiet, invisible, and irreversible, when a woman stops respecting you. It doesn't come with words. It doesn't arrive in anger. It comes in silence, disguised as calm. You don't see it happen, but something in her eyes changes. The way she looks at you stops reaching all the way through. The warmth fades, replaced by something polite, distant, almost pitying. You tell yourself nothing's wrong, that she's just tired, distracted, preoccupied. But deep down you feel it. You feel the cold space between what you used to be and what you've become. Respect dies long before love does. It dies when she sees that your words mean less than your actions, when the promises you made start to sound like excuses, when she realizes your strength is a costume and not a core. The exact moment she stops respecting you is not when you fail, but when you pretend not to. It's when you choose comfort over courage, when you back down from your own truth to avoid conflict, when you let her lead because you're afraid to lose her instead of being willing to lose her to stay real. She sees it before you do. Women have a quiet radar for weakness, not the kind born of vulnerability, but the kind that hides behind charm, ego, or passivity. At first, she forgives it. She tells herself, "You're just going through something." She remembers the man she once admired, the one who had direction, edge, gravity. But every time you betray that image, even slightly, she files it away. Not in anger, in observation, until one day the scales tip, and suddenly, she looks at you not as a man to trust, but as a boy to tolerate. That's the fracture. You'll notice it in how she stops asking for your opinion, how her tone shifts from curiosity to critique, how her touch becomes mechanical, her laughter delayed. She may still love you, but the respect, that quiet fire that makes love feel alive, is gone. And once it's gone, no amount of apology, money, or affection will resurrect it. Because respect isn't something you can demand back. It's something that's only ever earned once. And when it slips through your hands, you realize too late that it was never love that kept her close. It was the weight of how she saw you. The moment that weight disappears, so does the gravity between you. The illusion begins with her admiration. You believe it's love, but in truth, it's something deeper, more dangerous. It's the reflection of how she sees you, as capable, composed, certain. In the beginning, she studies you like a mystery she wants to understand, a strength she wants to stand beside. You mistake her curiosity for unconditional affection, but what she really falls for is your conviction. The illusion lives in the way she looks at you when she believes you know where you're going, when you walk with quiet authority, when your silence feels heavier than words. You feel powerful because she treats you like you are, and so you start to relax. You stop reaching, stop growing. You think she'll love you no matter what, because she said she would. You start confusing her comfort with permanence, her softness with submission. You start thinking you can keep her respect without earning it every day. That's the illusion, that love is enough. That once she chooses you, she'll never unsee the man she fell for. You start lowering your guard, not in vulnerability, but in complacency. You trade your hunger for routine, your edge for peace. You tell yourself this is what maturity looks like. This is what a stable relationship is. You convince yourself that peace means safety. But peace without purpose breeds decay. And slowly, without noticing, you start hiding behind her affection. You become smaller, quieter, predictable. You stop being the storm she admired and start being the shelter she outgrew. And she watches you fade, not with malice, but with a kind of quiet sadness. Because she once believed in your strength, and now she sees you coasting on its ghost. But the illusion comforts you. You tell yourself it's fine, that this is what real love looks like, soft, settled, secure. You stop noticing the small things. How she doesn't laugh as quickly, how her texts become shorter, how her eyes wander when you speak. You think you're safe because she hasn't left. But women rarely leave when they stop respecting you. They stay. They stay long enough to watch what you become when you think she never will. And that is the cruelest illusion of all, the idea that you still have her, when in truth, she's already gone. It doesn't break all at once. It cracks in silence. It begins with the smallest moments, ones you never take seriously enough to notice. She asked you to do something. and you say you will. But forget. She looks at you, waiting for accountability, and you deflect with a joke. She tells you what bothers her, and instead of listening, you defend yourself. You think you're protecting your pride, but what you're really doing is teaching her that your words carry no weight. Respect dies not in betrayal, but in the erosion of trust over time. She doesn't want perfection. She wants consistency. She wants to know that when she looks to you, she sees someone anchored, someone whose actions and words are aligned. But each small crack widens the distance. Every time you choose comfort over honesty, ego over empathy, another piece of her belief falls away. You start to feel her energy shift. Though she says nothing, she begins to withdraw in invisible ways. Her compliments fade. Her tone hardens. The warmth in her touch turns to obligation. You feel her slipping, and so you compensate. More affection, more apologies, more effort in bursts. But effort born from panic doesn't rebuild respect. It reeks of desperation. She senses it, and it pushes her further away. You start catching yourself in moments where you used to feel strong, but now you feel uncertain. You start to second-guess your words, your decisions, your worth. You begin reacting to her instead of leading yourself. And she sees it. The man she once admired is now asking for reassurance from the very person who lost faith in him. That is when the cracks deepen, because the moment she becomes your source of validation, the polarity that drew her to you begins to die. She doesn't want to mother you. She doesn't want to manage your emotions. She wants to feel the quiet safety of your self-respect. But you no longer radiate that calm, and she no longer feels the pull. Now she watches you overcompensate, talk too much, explain too much, prove too much. You try to win back what can't be earned through words. You don't realize that the moment you start trying to convince her to respect you again is the moment it becomes impossible. Because respect isn't rebuilt in arguments or promises. It's rebuilt in the silence of how you carry yourself. And right now, all she hears is noise. Eventually, the silence becomes unbearable. You feel it when she no longer looks at you the same, when her laughter doesn't land, when her affection feels like mercy instead of desire. You start grasping for what you once had, reaching for her attention like a drowning man reaching for air. You start asking questions you already know the answers to, hoping she'll lie to keep you comfortable. But she doesn't. She's distant, polite, detached. You call it coldness. She calls it clarity. What you're witnessing isn't anger, it's detachment. The slow, graceful withdrawal of a woman who no longer sees you as a man to follow, but as a man to endure. And it breaks something inside you. You try harder, thinking effort will heal what authenticity could not. You buy gifts, plan surprises, offer words you don't fully mean. You tell her you'll change, though you don't know how. You think you can perform your way back into her heart. But respect cannot be seduced. It must be felt. It must be seen in how you handle failure, how you handle her honesty, how you handle yourself. And right now, all she sees is a man unraveling. You start fighting ghosts, replaying arguments in your head, trying to find where it went wrong. You remember the moments you should have stood tall, but instead chose silence. You remember the things you said just to keep the peace, the times you avoided truth to stay liked. You realize too late that peace built on avoidance is a lie, and every lie costs a piece of her trust. The collapse doesn't come as a single event. It's the slow humiliation of realizing that she doesn't fear losing you anymore. Her indifference is colder than anger. It's final. She stops questioning, stops asking, stops explaining. You thought the worst thing that could happen was her leaving, but it's worse when she stays and looks at you with eyes that no longer believe. You can feel her love fading into habit, her patience turning to exhaustion. You feel like a guest in your own relationship, and every time you reach for her, she pulls away, not physically, but emotionally, invisibly, completely. That's when it hits you. You're no longer trying to win her heart. You're trying to win back her respect, and that battle is already lost, because the man she once admired wouldn't have to fight for it. He simply was. The reckoning arrives quietly, like a mirror you can no longer avoid. You wake up beside her, and even though her body is there, her presence is gone. The room feels colder. Her silence has weight. You search for comfort in old patterns, humor, charm, small talk, but nothing reaches her anymore. Every word feels hollow because she's seen behind it. You can feel her looking at you not as a partner, but as a memory that no longer fits who she's becoming. And for the first time, you stop blaming her for it. You start seeing the truth, that respect isn't lost in a single betrayal, but in the slow death of accountability. You thought being good to her was enough. You thought loyalty was the same as leadership. But she didn't fall in love with your good intentions. She fell in love with your direction. The way you used to move with certainty. The way your silence carried conviction. Somewhere along the line, you stopped leading yourself, and that's when she stopped believing in you. The reckoning is cruel because it doesn't come from her anger, but from your awareness. You start remembering every time she looked at you hoping to feel safe, and how you shrugged it off. Every time she needed reassurance, and you were too distracted, too proud, too numb to give it. You start seeing how she waited for you to rise, to show her the same strength you once carried so easily, and you never did. Now you see it all in hindsight, how her tone shifted, how her patience thinned, how her silence grew sharper. You used to mistake her quiet for peace. Now you understand it was the sound of her respect dying. And what hurts most isn't that she no longer admires you. It's that you no longer admire yourself. The man you were, the man she believed in, feels like a stranger you abandoned for comfort. You realize that every compromise, every moment you swallowed your truth just to be liked, was a slow surrender of your own reflection. You wanted her to see you as strong, but you stopped living in a way that demanded strength. And now, as you stand in the wreckage of what you both built, you see that her distance isn't punishment, it's consequence. Because respect isn't something she took from you. It's something you handed away, piece by piece. Every time you chose fear over honesty, every time you pretended to be less than who you were. When the truth finally settles, the world around you starts to shift. People notice what she no longer says. Friends sense the change before you admit it. They see it in her tone, in the way she speaks about you in the past, tense, while you still talk, as if everything's fine. Respect doesn't die in isolation, it echoes. The people who once looked up to your relationship start sensing the fracture. You begin feeling smaller in every room, not because they judge you, but because you've begun to judge yourself. You start seeing how much of your worth was tied to her admiration, how her belief in you made others believe in you too. Now, without it, you feel exposed. You notice her laughter around other men, not flirtatious, but free. You notice how she listens to others the way she once listened to you. And it burns, not out of jealousy, but from recognition. You see the reflection of the man you used to be mirrored in someone else's confidence. You realize that respect, once lost, reshapes how the world sees you. Her distance becomes a signal that others can feel, subtle but unmistakable. She's no longer defending you in conversations. She's no longer correcting misunderstandings about you. She's no longer fighting for your image. The social fabric that held your pride together starts unraveling. You start walking differently, speaking differently, doubting your every decision. You try to reclaim your composure, but self-respect doesn't come back through image control. It comes from integrity, from doing what's right when no one is watching. Yet now, everyone seems to be watching. Every silence feels like judgment. Every glance feels like pity. You start living as though you're under observation, and that self-consciousness becomes its own prison. She, on the other hand, moves through the world lighter. Not cruelly, not proudly, just detached. It's not that she wants you to suffer. She's simply no longer invested in your redemption. You realize that respect, once gone, doesn't just alter the relationship, it rewrites your social identity. The man you were when she admired you doesn't exist in their eyes anymore. And you can't rebuild him through performance or charm. You must rebuild him in solitude, where no one applauds. But most men never do. They spend years chasing the validation they lost, instead of rebuilding the foundation they destroyed. You begin to understand that the world mirrors your internal state, and when you stopped respecting yourself, everyone else simply followed her lead. The identity loss is the quietest kind of death. It doesn't scream. It fades. You start existing in fragments. Part of you still reaching for who you were. Part of you drowning in who you've become. You wake up and move through the day like a shadow of your former self. haunted by the memory of a man you once embodied effortlessly. Every mirror becomes a confrontation. You search for strength in your reflection, but all you see is hesitation. You replay moments where you used to command presence, where your silence held weight, where your conviction shaped the air around you. Now your words feel lighter, your presence uncertain. You no longer move with purpose. You move with memory. You start wondering when exactly you lost it, when you started apologizing for your own existence, when you began choosing softness not from love, but from fear. You thought love would save you from yourself, but it only revealed how easily you could be undone. Without her respect, your identity unravels, because so much of it was built around how she saw you. And now that her gaze no longer reflects admiration, you feel invisible. You start questioning everything, your worth, your direction, even your masculinity. You start to crave her validation not because you want her, but because you need proof that you still matter. But she's gone, even if she's still there. Her silence becomes the mirror you fear the most. You try to rebuild through others, new women, new distractions, new performances, but it never feels the same. Because respect isn't something you receive, it's something you radiate. And until you rebuild it within yourself, every connection will echo the same emptiness. Loneliness becomes the teacher you never wanted. Nights feel longer. Conversations feel pointless. You withdraw, hoping isolation will cleanse you, but it only magnifies the void. You realize how much of your identity was dependent on being seen. And now that no one is looking at you with belief, you have to learn how to see yourself again, not through her eyes, not through their judgment, but through your own quiet resolve. The process is brutal. It demands honesty, humility, and the courage to face what you've become without flinching. You lose people, habits, illusions. You lose the version of yourself that cared too much about being loved and too little about being real. And somewhere in that desolation, something begins to shift. The pain stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like purification. Because only when everything you built collapses, do you finally see what was never solid to begin with. In the end, there's no grand revelation, no moment of redemption that restores what was lost. There's only the quiet understanding of truth. You realize that respect is not about dominance, nor charm, nor control. It is the quiet gravity of being whole, the kind of strength that does not need to be proven, the kind of presence that does not seek permission. You begin to see that what she lost for you was never truly hers to give. It was yours to maintain, and you failed to protect it, not from her, but from yourself. The final truth is that every woman stops respecting a man the moment he stops respecting himself. It doesn't matter how much she loves him, how loyal she tries to be, how deeply she wants to believe. The feminine heart cannot admire what refuses to stand tall. Love without respect becomes pity. Passion without reverence becomes routine. And the man who was once her world becomes a memory she no longer feels. But this isn't tragedy, it's awakening. Because beneath the ruin, beneath the loss and the silence, something raw and honest begins to breathe again. You stop chasing what left you. You stop performing for approval. You stop confusing being needed with being valued. You begin to walk differently, slower, grounded, deliberate. You speak less, but mean more. You no longer crave to be seen, because you've learned that the only gaze that matters is the one you face in the mirror. Respect returns not through apologies or persuasion, but through the quiet rebuilding of your own integrity, through keeping promises no one sees, through acting with purpose when no one's watching, through standing firm in your truth, even if it cost you affection. You realize that she didn't destroy you. She revealed you. She showed you where your foundations were weak, where your confidence was borrowed, where your worth depended on reflection instead of reality. And that is the gift buried beneath the loss. Because now, when you stand up again, you do it differently. Not to win anyone back, not to prove a point, but because you've remembered who you were before you forgot yourself. The exact moment a woman stops respecting you is not the end of something. It's the beginning of who you are when no one else is watching.